right. A very interesting, but certainly an enlightening and educational show. We're talking about Don't Let This Be You, and it's geared toward mostly our teenagers and those who are in their early 20s about keeping them out of jail, you know, not committing crimes. And sometimes people make mistakes, but all the time you don't get a second chance. But they're saying, you know, hey, you have to really think before some of the decisions you make about, you know, driving and drinking. Let me ask this judge or either attorney stands for somebody out there who's watching, maybe some teenagers, and I hear this all the time. I don't drink, I don't use drugs, but sometimes my friends do, and I let them ride or drink, you know, while I'm driving. Did you just say early on to make sure that everybody understands that if the police stops someone with drugs in the car, whether you use them or not, you're guilty at that point, you will be. You can be arrested.
You can be arrested at that point based on the constructive possession of contraband law,
right?
And ownership is not the key. And typically, if there's 4 guys in a car, nobody will say they own it. Nobody.
Like, I don't know how all these this bag a week I hear.
That's exactly right. Or there's cocaine on the floorboard. We don't know whose that is. But ownership is not the key. The issue is possession and constructive possession. That is knowledge of it and some level of dominion over it. And people get arrested all the time based on that law.
Right. And sometimes I'm sure they can have to prove themselves that they had no idea, and that sometimes that can be very tough for attorneys to say, I had no idea when he went in that store that he was going to rob. I had no idea that when he got in my car that he had, you know, a couple of bags of weeds in his pocket. And there are some people who don't have any idea.
And unfortunately, Ken, that's not a legal call for us. It's a call that a jury has to make, whether or not they believe them or not, as it relates to the possession of the drugs, or whether or not they went into what they had knowledge of an armed robbery when they were sitting outside. And let me tell you, juries are pretty much convinced most of the time, and they will convict based upon principles in constructive possession. Many drug cases are won based upon constructive possession. It doesn't have to be in your pocket. And unfortunately, it would be a bad thing to have to go through the entire process to prove to a juror that is probably not going to find you credible, as a result of a bad decision. That's an unfortunate situation. You shouldn't have to experience that. I think it comes down to what we say most: make a good decision in the beginning, and you don't have to worry about the results or the consequences. And again, you know, my mom used to say, you know, birds of a feather.
I was just about to say that, flock together.
Birds of a feather flock together.
Just about to come out and you pretty much know the company you keep.
Absolutely.
You may want to be in denial, but you pretty much know if your best buddy and your homie is using drugs, or if he's drinking, or she, or whatever. And so when you decide that you want to let them ride in your car and use drugs, or come to your apartment and hang out there, you already know what they're doing. And that's why it's so hard for a juror to say, no, I can't believe you've been friends with this person this long and you don't know what they're doing.
Well, and let me tell you, jurors are tough. A jury is made up of a good cross-section of the community, 12 people in number, and they are philosophically very law-abiding, and they are sick of crime out there, and they're going to be tough on these cases. They are going to require the district attorney to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt, but they walk in with good common sense and a tough philosophy. And they hear the cases and they apply the law.
You gentlemen, I mean, we have to applaud you all again for starting this program. Don't let this be you. Now, we know this is Caddo Parish. What about, are there other parishes throughout the state now implementing this program? Because it's a win-win. I mean, you can't lose, and I think every parent needs to really get a little bit more information about that and take those, have the children take the tour. It doesn't matter if your child has all A's. I know sometimes we get into my child is so good. I know that, you know, he doesn't run or she doesn't run. It's still good for them to know, you know, because there are good children who sometimes turn bad because they get with the wrong group. So is this program being implemented anywhere else other than the Caddo Parish?
Judge Crichton and Richard Johnson, who is the district attorney in DeSoto Parish, they've joined to bring the program to DeSoto. Richard has a justice teaching initiative that he uses, and we go out into the schools and we present this program, and we've recently added as well in DeSoto a component that involves a jail tour. Good. So it's now in Caddo and in DeSoto, and I believe other judges around the state have adopted this program and using this program at least as a cookie cutter and tailoring it to their jurisdictions.
That's great. That's great.
That's true. And last year I served as president of the Louisiana District Judge Association, and through that I was able to introduce this program across the state to other judges in other jurisdictions, South Louisiana, Central Louisiana, and there are about 15 or 16 or so judges doing this program in their districts.
Right, because your vision to hopefully prevent some child from going to jail for life or making this decision that's going to
well, and an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. We talked about birds. Now we're going to talk about an ounce of prevention. And it's true. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Right. And this business of locking people up, it costs a fortune for taxpayers. Right. It is tough on families. It's tough on the individual. Right. There's nothing good about it. Right. Now again, I'm a tough on lawbreakers type judge. Right. And as I have been the last 22 years, that was my pledge to the community when I was elected. Right. But I also believe in education, prevention through education, as does Ron Stamps.
So, and again, it comes down to, it's biblical for both of us. It's really tempering justice and mercy. Right. Okay. And giving them an opportunity to say, listen, we're going to show you all the mercy right now. Make the good decisions. Right. But if you make the good decision, you keep us out of your lives. Right. But if you bring us into your lives, we're forced to do our jobs because he takes an oath and I take an oath. Right. And to be honest with you, I'd rather not send an 18 or 19-year-old to prison. I'd rather not do that. But a bad decision will force both of us to do our jobs. And again, he's a tough judge, and I have to be a tough prosecutor because I have victims on the other side. Right.
And that's another thing. That's a really great point. That your desire would be never to see any of these young people.
Not at all.
I mean, you wouldn't have a job as that kind of judge. We'll get you something else.
That's right. That's right.
But another thing, let's clarify. There are young people out there who say, like, okay, it'll be my first offense. I'll get off easy. So if I get caught, it's all right because it's the first time that I've done something.
Not necessarily so.
That's why I want to. Okay, for those who are thinking, okay, I can do anything the first time.
Well, the system, we have compassion about young people and missteps, but sometimes those missteps are so serious that they will be prosecuted by Ron Stamps and the district attorneys, and sometimes those missteps become serious crimes that have to be dealt with, and sentences are going to be tough. Right. So again, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and in fact, John F. Kennedy said a miseducated or uneducated child is a lost child, and what we see is lost children who grow up to be lost adults, and we see a lot of 20-something-year-olds and 30-something-year-olds who never understood any of these concepts and perhaps didn't care to understand them, and they end up in and out of the system, and it's heartbreaking. It's tough on society, and it's tough on all of us as taxpayers.
Right. You made a good point there. Are there characteristics that you see the most in the criminal justice system? And I'm sure most of us know the answer to that, but I'm not shying away from it. Just tell us, just be raw. What kind of teenagers do you see the most?
There's this old adage that says, hurt people hurt people. Oh. And I think a lot of the young individuals that we see are misguided, and they're missing one thing that they need, and that sends them in the wrong direction. Now, what that might be, Ken, it may be an absent father, or a father who's neglecting them, a mother on drugs, or a young mother who didn't give them that foundation. We see all of the results of that in the courtroom. And I know a lot of times, we don't consider cause. We just look at the action that's before the court or that I read on paper. There's another program that we do, the reentry program, where we have an opportunity, and Judge Crichton again created this program that I participate in with him, where we get to talk to the inmates who are about to be released on parole. Okay. And when we go into those situations, and you just talk to those individuals, and you find out, well, what do you think caused you to get here? Those character issues that you talk about are developed from issues that usually come from the home. Some lack of something, or something that they didn't get, or something that they needed.
Or some abuse or
and
something.
This is, or some abuse. And this is a reaction. This is a result. The crime ends up being a manifestation of what we see in, as a result of them not receiving something. And again, I think for us, our job is to, through this program and through both programs, after conviction, address those issues and guide them to address those issues. And for the kids who we see now, if those issues are present, listen, take this information, let's deal with it, let's talk about it, and hopefully they'll make decisions based upon what's presented, and we won't see them in the system.
And you know, it can also be another situation where both parents are at home, but they both work, and maybe between the two parents they have 3 and 4 jobs. They're trying to make ends meet, and so they're at work a lot, and the kids are at home, and they end up in the street, and peer pressure sort of dominates their days, and one thing leads to another. We see that as well. So there are all sorts of different variations.
I guess we can see how, you know, things you talk about, you know, biblical or whatever, you know, because mothers now are working, and you know, at one time things were different. You had the mother at home, and seemed like things weren't as bad as they are now. I know we had, you know, we've always had crime. And I think one of the things that baffle, we're going to have to take a break and you can answer this when you come back. I've heard parents say, you know, I have 2 sons, 3 sons, or whatever the parent would say. What happened? They were raised up in the same home. We got the same parents. You know, we did the same for each child we provided. But what happened to this one that he just went all the way left, and this one is all the way right? We'll talk about that when we come back. We were talking about this great program that Judge Crichton started, and Attorney Stamps came on board with it. It's called Don't Let This Be You, and it's a prevention program to keep your child, your grandchild, your nieces or nephew, teenagers up to early 20s out of jail. So stay with us, and we'll have some final remarks in talking about this program.